I want to start with Judas and the fact that Judas was a friend of Christ and asked one of his disciples, and he sold him out for 30 pieces of silver. He lived or died regretting it. And I saw it as being parallel with what's happening in politics in this country. It's how people have sold out their communities to corporations. And for some, just greed and power.
Alrighty, welcome in. Alabama Politics this week. Josh Moon and
David Person.
How are you, David?
Man, I'm good. And as we launch our podcast today, our Alabama-centric podcast, before we give kudos to our friends at Wind Creek Entertainment, I want to give a shout-out quickly to the Alabama State Hornets.
Yeah.
Who got their first NCAA win, I think, in the history of the school, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
Yeah, so that's I was happy to see that. It was they eked it out at the last minute in a miracle.
Yeah, Hail Mary, man. Hail Mary.
Yeah, Hail Mary, yeah.
Yeah, we were at a restaurant here in Madison last night watching that. Of course, you know, I covered ASU for years. Traveled with the basketball program, both men's and women's, to a number of different games, including to a couple of NCAA games. Watched them get thrashed by Duke one year in Raleigh. Watched them. You know, and I watched them in Dayton in a game that they were favored to win. I believe they played Oakwood, if I'm not mistaken, from California, the California Oakwood School. And
is it Oakwood or Oakland?
I think it's Oakwood.
I think it was Oakwood. Is it
yeah,
Oakwood? Okay.
I think they've been in the tournament a few years. But that team was supposed to win. Lewis Jackson was a coach. Still talk to some guys on that team from time to time, and they got upset, and so I had to wander into a locker room and talk to some folks who, you know, they legitimately thought they were going to go into the next round. We'd already started making plans to go and cover them in a first round game, later in the week, and it didn't happen. And so I was thrilled for them, for Quentin Ross, Tony Madlock, and the boys. You know, they took some heat for hiring Tony Madlock. The folks didn't think he was the best choice for the job, and they believed in him and got him and his son there to play, and I was thrilled. That entire restaurant was thrilled last night when we were watching. It was everybody was screaming when the shot went in, and it was nice. Yeah. It was nice. But yeah, it was. That thing has been everywhere, man. And I listened to a couple of national shows this morning, and they were all talking about the Alabama State win and how it was probably the best play-in game that there has ever been. And so
I didn't see the game, but I saw the highlights on ESPN this morning, and it was fun to watch.
Oh, it was good, man. They were down. They were down, late in the game, and came back and took a lead a couple of times. And to St. Francis' credit, they came back, made some big shots, and tied that thing up. And then Alabama State had another chance earlier in the final minute to hit a shot, and it clanked off the rim and went the other way. And poor St. Francis could not hold on to the ball, man. They just could not hold on to the ball, and it set up that last with 3 seconds or whatever it was, that last little Hail Mary pass to the end. And it was great. It was great to see. I sent Quentin Ross a message. He's been on here with us last night as a friend of mine, and I thought, man, what a win. And he said, I don't know if my heart can take much more of this. But luckily, they're going, they'll be playing the Auburn Tigers on Thursday. So I think maybe the dream run will end. But
perhaps, high probability. Yeah.
But it's been they're good. I know this. I know the folks. I watched a little bit of the selection stuff on Sunday, and the guys at Auburn were very happy to see Alabama State as their possible matchup. They were very excited for that. to know that those guys. I think the interaction between the schools and the players and stuff. I'm not sure what that is, but a lot of times if they're close, there's some interaction like that between some college players.
Know each other. Sure.
It seemed as though they had a relationship of some sort. So
yeah, probably same AAU teams in high school. Yeah. When they were younger and maybe high
you got your brackets
even.
Filled out?
I do not, sir. I do not. I don't keep up with college basketball enough to really
Nobody
fill
does.
out brackets, man.
Nobody does.
You told me that.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You just fill it out.
Fill it out.
You
throw
can't
a dart
pick this
and
out.
hope it hits the target.
That's exactly right. Yes, it's all luck. Nobody can do this. Listen, listen. We both listened to the Tony Kornheiser podcast, and a few years back they let his producer mom, Phil's mom, come on and pick a bracket, and and she has Cretan. She had Cretan, and it's
the other one that she always I can't remember the other one that she always mispronounces. It's funny. It's cute.
She beat out longtime sports writers and people that love the game. Some of the college basketball's my biggest writers. She beat them out. This is the tournament. It's just a crapshoot. My wife routinely beats me at this. My daughter beat me last year. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, listen, because who picks some of these games? Some of the upsets. And if you're not tied to it, and you can't just say, "Well, there's no way that Furman's going to beat Virginia." No chance. No chance. Yale's taking down Auburn in the first round. It happens.
Right.
So if you're not tied to it, I think it frees you up a little bit. And last couple of years has just been crazy. And so, hey, you know what? It's a good lead in though. If you're looking to watch the games, I know it's a great place to go. Our friends at Wind Creek Casino, Wind Creek Entertainment, go down to one of their fine establishments. They'll have them all playing. You can watch. They'll have the tournament parties going. They'll have the special prizes. They'll have the whole deal going on, man. Go to the website and look them up. Wind Creek Entertainment. They sponsored this program. It is Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wind Creek Entertainment. And there's a reason for that. They like our product. We like theirs. We've both taken part of their product, and they routinely listen to ours. And so we find ourselves in a nice little relationship where it's very mutually beneficial, and I would hope that y'all would go and take advantage of that as well, because it is a great place. They do a great job. I heard from some people not too long back who said, we went a few years back, and the smoking just got to me. It was just no smoke. No smoking there anymore. There's a smoking area off to the back, and they do a great job with the ventilation and stuff in that area, and it stays. I was so surprised, because I was the same way. It had been a few years. The last time I went, it had been a few years, and to go in and you don't smell it at all. I was like, oh man, what happened to the smoke?
I don't remember. I don't remember the smoke being a problem. Now I do remember being told that it used to be they used to have smoking there in Wetumpka, the Wetumpka location, but they and I think they still want to change out the carpets. The general manager Kay Williams, who's great by the way. Said, but I mean, it didn't inhibit me at all as I moved around through the casino and watched. What people were doing and the fun time people were having, the food court, walk through the food court, which is really huge. I mean, it's like a food court in a mall, probably bigger actually. Yeah. Probably bigger than a lot of mall food courts, really.
Yeah. It's a nice place. I'm telling you, you can't beat it. Go down, watch it. And unlike David, fill out a bracket and have some fun. Don't be a stick in the mud. Don't be a stick in the mud like David. Go down to the casino, fill out a bracket, have some fun, have yourself some fun. All right. So we got to get into this thing here.
Yeah.
So we have a great guest coming up. The great Catherine and Coleman Flowers is going to join us, and we've been efforting Catherine, who went big time on us. It used to be you could get Catherine on any time, and then she got popular and she forgot about us littles down here.
Well, she became one of Time's most influential people in the world, 100 most influential people in the world, and started chairing or co-chairing, I should say, a White House committee on environmental justice. And so, she's got 2 books under her belt now, both of which are really good reads. So, there you go.
Poor excuses. All right. No, that's absolutely right. She's been ultra busy. We've both spoken with her a few times, but it's just trying to arrange the podcast interview has we finally were able to get that, and we're happy to do it. But all right, so let's get into the current week, and there are a few things that we would like that we wanted to start out with here, and I'll let you decide, David. What do you think we should start with off the top? Because I don't know that any of the 4 or any of the 3 or 4 that we had were necessarily bigger than the others.
Well, I think I'd like to start with the one that really has direct impact on the future of our state, and that's Tommy Tuberville, his potential run for governor, and how already there's some infighting among the Republicans because it has been, and you've done, I know, a lot of reporting. In fact, I think you actually helped to have been sort of at the forefront. You and Bill Britt have been at the forefront of the reporting on the fact that Tuberville, it's really hard to say he lives in Alabama, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's really hard to say that, right?
Yeah, we wrote a story in APR this week, and it basically boils down to this: does Tommy Tuberville live at this home on Cherry Street in Auburn? We all know about the beach house in Florida. We all know about the Santa Rosa Beach property that he owns down there. It was roughly a $6 million valued property. He bought it back in, I think, 2002. 2002, 2004. So he's had it for a while. It's, that's the current estimated value of it. I think he bought it for a couple $1 million, just back when he was coaching at Auburn still. And so he's lived in it for that length of time. And the house in Auburn on Cherry Street is a house that was purchased by Tommy Tuberville's son and his wife together. And it was one that his son lived in post-graduation. And, they claim, what the claim is that his son lived in it for a period of time until he moved to New York. And then Tommy Tuberville began living there. I guess he and his wife began living there shortly after his son left to go take a job, financial district job in New York City. And so what we are to believe, if you want to believe that Tommy Tuberville lives in this state, is that Tommy Tuberville and his wife live in a $375,000 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot house in Auburn, just a random little neighborhood. If you don't believe that, then you likely believe that it's more likely that he lives in a 4,000 square foot beachfront property valued at $6 million in Santa Rosa Beach that he has owned for 22 years.
So I got 2 questions for you. Since you've really done extensive reporting on this, it seems to me there are 2 logical questions that should be asked. The first question is, are people in the neighborhood saying that they see Tuberville and or his wife there on a regular basis, or that they see any activity in the house?
Yeah, they see some activity. So here it's kind of first of all, getting people to talk to you about such a thing is rather difficult at times. But I won't say that there hasn't been some success in that area. And so I'll say that from what I could tell, he they use that property sporadically, most often for game day situations, is what I would say. And however, I don't know that there is any evidence that they have ever stayed at that property.
Meaning spent the night
at that property. I don't know that they, and that's under the law, that's a pretty big thing. That you've got to show that that's where you lay your head most often at home, when you're at home. And this is where you eat your meals. This is where you lay your head. This is where this is where your clothes are. It's where all your property is and all that. I don't think currently that can be shown. I would like, honestly, I wish that there was a way to just like to watch the house, because I think at some point they're going to try to prove that, and that, they're going to have to move some things into the house to make that happen.
I suspect that the Republicans are going to be on top of that. Ainsworth, your boy Ainsworth, is going to be on top of that. My second question is, when it comes to Tuberville's travel schedule, when he's flying out of D.C. to go back home for weekends or recesses, where's he going? Where does he fly to? Alabama or Florida?
I will say this. His FEC filings through his PACs. There are multiple charges. As a matter of fact, there are monthly charges to a business called 30A Taxi and Shuttle Service, which is located in Panama City Beach, Florida. And we're talking about $10,000 or so dollars, tens of thousands of dollars that have been paid to this taxi and shuttle service, in the form of monthly payments, $500, $600, $700 per month. And there's only one thing you use a taxi and shuttle service for, and it's to be picked up at the airport and driven to your home or residence, around that area, and so that is taking place. There are multiple charges through his various PACs, for dinners, for food, for different things in Florida. There are very few things charged in Alabama, including through his office expenses. As a matter of fact, I cannot find where he has flown in to Auburn. Now that may be, it may be a thing where you can't necessarily get a flight into Auburn, and he's having to fly into elsewhere. But most of the travel that is listed through his office expenses is listed as, when Auburn is listed on there, it's Auburn, Montgomery, Atlanta, other places. And so, and there's just not a lot of stuff there. There's just not a lot of charges there.
So now my final question is, in light of what you just said, well, first let me make a statement. In light of what you just said, it sounds to me like I don't know how anybody could believe that he actually lives in Alabama based on what you just said. Yeah. So my final question is, what can Ainsworth or any other Republican that wants to run for governor do to prevent him from being in the GOP primary with this kind of evidence? What can they do?
So, I mean, here's the other thing. All right, so it's the Senate deal. The reason nobody has really brought this up, is qualification residential issues for occupying a U.S. Senate seat are vastly different than it is for governor. For Senate, you only have to live there a day. All right, you only have to live now. You're supposed to have a residence within the state or a property within the state, they say. Now that's also a problem for Tuberville because nothing is in his name in this state. They've gotten around that by saying, well, his wife has the house. I mean, how many people don't share occupancy with their spouses? And all right, you can get around that for the Senate. The problem that he now runs into is that to qualify to run for governor, you have to live in this state as your primary residence. Your primary residence has to be in this state for 7 consecutive years before you can qualify. All that said, the determination for qualification is going to come down to John Wall and the Alabama Republican Party. And now, they can challenge it in court after the decision has been made. But that challenge in court would likely not be allowed until the primary has been waged, and probably not until the general election. So he could very well be the sitting governor facing the challenge to his residency. And then of course you get into some other issues or whatnot, but I don't know. So, it's going to be a matter of whether or not John Wall and the party, John Wall's got his own problems. And so, we can get to that sometime down the line as well. But, we'll see whether or not, it should not surprise anyone that the man who made his own fake ID to be able to vote under an assumed name might be a bit freewheeling when it comes to election integrity. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'll say this though, I don't think that Tommy Tuberville is prepared for the amount of scrutiny, the amount of attacks, the amount of just turning his life upside down that a contested race with a serious opponent like Will Ainsworth will have. Those are two very well funded. And this is the other thing I don't know. We know where Will Ainsworth is going to get his funding. We know where it's primarily going to come from. I mean, he's personally wealthy. His father's very wealthy. He has the backing of BCA. He has the backing of Alpha. So we know where a lot of that's going to come from. Where's Tuberville's going to come from? Because he can't use that federal money that he has. So, what's that gonna? Where is he gonna get that from? And who's gonna be the supporters in there? And listen, I know he's gonna have name ID. I know he's gonna walk into this race with name ID. But I've got a real doubt about his. First of all, Tommy Tuberville's most famous attribute is his laziness. Okay. I mean, that's just, he quit Auburn because he didn't want to work as hard as Nick Saban. And so, and it's been that way, his entire career. Look at what he's done in the Senate. Does anybody really think Tuberville's out there just killing himself doing these things? I mean, no, he's not. And, and I think that's, he backdoored his way into a U.S. Senate seat in the perfect spot where he had the president of the United States lobbing bombs into the other person's camp when Jeff Sessions was running. And so he never really got vetted.
Yeah. Well, now, I think you may have just answered your question with the word president. I would assume that Trump is going to be a big backer of Tuberville for governor.
I wouldn't assume that.
The reason I would assume it is that, as far as I know, Tuberville, it's been pretty obvious Tuberville has been one of his most diehard supporters. And while we know loyalty is not Trump's strong suit, he does tend to, when it can benefit him, he does tend to stick with those who have who've been loyal to him when it benefits him. And I don't know, I haven't seen any evidence that Ainsworth has any particular, any particular affinity to Trump. Am I missing that? Have I missed something?
I don't think that there's been any alienation between Ainsworth and Trump. I think that there is a connection to the White House that he has, and I think that that I would not assume that Trump is going to be supportive of Tommy Tuberville running for governor. As a matter of fact, there has been some rumors of late that that the word from the White House was we would prefer you to stay in the Senate. That it was
Oh, okay.
sent to
Okay.
Tuberville. But
Okay.
and so I'm not saying that they're angry with Tuberville for kicking this thing around or anything, but I think that the word was, hey, we would prefer if you stayed in the Senate, kind of thing. And so we shall see. I'm not saying he's going to be adversarial to Tommy Tuberville at all. I don't think that. I think he would, I think if he decided to run, Tuberville would clear it with Trump and get the blessing and all that. But I don't know that he's necessarily going to be involved in this race in the same manner in which he was involved with the Sessions race, because I think Trump would see it as a wash, whether it's Tuberville or it's Ainsworth, particularly in the primary. Now, of course, he would be involved in making an endorsement in the general election.
Sure, without question. Yeah.
And of course, now that's assuming that Trump survives that long. So it's and the McDonald's doesn't kick in. So, which I've seen the prayer TikToks, and I understand them. But yeah. So I think that's where we are with this, man. I think that we're we're looking at an interesting few months, I should say.
Well, do we have time, or do we need to hold off until after Catherine to talk about the other really big story that you've been working on? In fact, I think you're the one who broke the story, which is that Doug Jones, former U.S. Senator Doug Jones, is talking about suing Alabama Democratic Party Chair Randy Kelley.
I think because we talked about it a good bit last week, and so let's spend 5 minutes real quick and do that. It's Doug Jones through Barry Ragsdale, and Barry, another first person we've had on this program, is a great attorney, one of the smartest attorneys that I know, the guy that I turn to for legal opinions often, because Barry has a very unique way of not telling you things that you want to hear, and also of breaking it down so idiots like myself can understand the legal aspects of stuff. And it's always appreciated because it often then makes its way into what I write, and it allows me to tell people, kind of what's happening in a non-legalese way. And so through that attorney, they issued a letter, demand for retraction, which is required under the law in Alabama if you're planning to sue somebody for libel. And they asked Randy Kelley to retract his statements, essentially alleging fraud in fundraising on behalf of Doug Jones. And he basically claims that Doug sent out mailers that made it seem as though he was raising money for the Alabama Democratic Party, when in fact he was raising money for his affiliated PACs that he was working with, and working to help folks, other candidates here that may or may not necessarily be, the people that ADP wanted to, or ADC wanted to push and promote. And that those mailers fooled some people into believing this. And so, we talked about it a little bit last week, and I felt like that I felt like what Randy Kelley did could have been handled in a much better way, a much more professional way, if he had done what Doug suggested in the story, which is sent a letter to the attorney, or to Doug, or had the attorney from ADP send a letter to one of them and say, hey, you're doing this, what's going on? And Doug said, I could have explained, no, here, look, let me show you what this is. We're not doing this. And because I'll be honest and tell you that I have not seen any evidence of this. I asked for some, and what Randy Kelley sent to me were 2 emailed Substacks, which Substacks is basically a blog hosting platform, where Doug had entered these 2 Substacks and mailed them out to his mailing list. And the only solicitation on that was at the very bottom, where it was a solicitation for the Substack. It wasn't even Doug asking for it. It was Substack asking for it, for you to help support this Substack. And so then the other one that he said had been received was a mailer that had received some time back, that went out to these ministers in Huntsville, and one of the ministers said he believed he was donating to ADP and was in fact donating to whatever Doug had sent out at that time. And so, and I saw those, and those have a disclaimer at the bottom that say that this is not a product of Alabama Democratic Party. And so I don't, you know, I just think it was something that he got mad about, and he sent the letter out like that. And I think it was perhaps more serious of an allegation than he intended it to be. But it's a very serious one because we've just had somebody go to jail for this. And so I think that then, elicited the response from Doug Jones, to which Randy Kelley said, I ain't retracting nothing. So here we are.
All right. So my take is that Randy Kelley, like him or not, and I know there are people that love Randy Kelley. There are people that despise him. There are people that don't think his leadership has been productive. But one thing I think people should be able to agree on is that he's not stupid. So my feeling is that Randy, I'm sorry, not Randy. Let me title him appropriately. Dr. Kelley, Reverend Dr. Kelley, has done this with a true belief. And also, I'm going to say this, and this, we can debate this or not. In addition to him not being stupid, I do believe he's a person of integrity. That doesn't mean I agree with everything he has said or done. And like you, if it had been me, I would have handled it differently than he did. But having said that, I don't think he's stupid. I think he's a person of integrity. And my belief is that he truly believed, based on what he had been told, and there's some minister apparently that told him this, that he truly believed that this person believed that they were being solicited on behalf of the Democratic Party. And so I think that when it comes down to the actual lawsuit, I think there's going to be a real challenge here in terms of establishing slander. Now, should it have been handled differently? Sure, we could agree on that. But in terms of whether or not Randy Kelley will be found liable of slander if there is a lawsuit, not so sure that's going to happen.
Maybe I don't know. It may not. I think. I think though. I have some problems. When we talk about the integrity aspect of things, I have some problems with the way that Randy Kelley has done some things. All right. I'm not saying necessarily in this particular instance. I think this particular instance, personally, my opinion is exactly what I said. I think he heard this from somebody. He got carried away with it. And he wanted to put a stop to it. And he made some allegations that he didn't realize were as serious as they are. And so I think that's where this thing stands. Now, I think in other cases, I think some of the things that he's come on this show and said to us were flat out lies. And I think he knew he was, an example of that is the talk about the not cutting the caucuses. I think that was a flat out lie that he told on here. He said it numerous times when everybody who could look at what was taking place and what he was saying was patently false and untrue. And he knew it, and he knew what their purpose was. And he knew the purpose was to cut those caucuses out in order to maintain control by the ADC. And that's exactly what it was. And him coming on and saying otherwise, I felt, listen, if he wanted to do it, that's fine. Okay. We can disagree on the purpose and the tactics and everything else, but to come on here and pretend as though that it was all this altruistic sort of idea that, oh, no, we're trying to give them more of a voice. It was just nonsense. And so that sort of thing makes me question, to a certain degree, his integrity. Now, I agree with you. I don't think he's a dumb person. And for the most part, the conversations that we've had with Randy Kelley have been pleasant. I've always appreciated him coming on and explaining his point of view, and I've understood his point of view, even those that I've disagreed with to a large degree. I just have a problem sometimes with the way he goes. I think he allows himself to be led sometimes by certain other people and certain other causes, and it does not do himself a good service. But that's just my opinion. I'm not saying at all that Randy Kelley is a bad person, is a bad man. I think he's a good man. I think he's a good guy, and he wants to do right, and he wants to do well. I believe all of that. I've had some trouble reconciling some of the things he said with the truth, and so
Okay, well, I can accept that. I mean, the caucus issue is one that I thought was probably murky the way he explained it at best. So I won't dispute with you on that. I know we're out of time though.
No, I mean, if you had something else to say, we can say it. It's okay. Listen, it's our podcast.
No, I mean, yeah. I don't want to. I don't want to belabor the point. I think it's going to be interesting to see how it proceeds. My main bottom line, I'll just say this real quickly, Josh. My main bottom line with this is both of these guys are in a pissing contest as far as I'm concerned. I'm talking about Dr. Kelley and former Senator Jones. I think they're in a pissing contest that has been protracted and that has gotten very personal. And I don't think it does the Democratic Party of Alabama one bit of good. I think it is damaging, and I think both of them are culpable. And they're culpable for different reasons, but I think they're both culpable. I think they have both demonstrated culpability on this podcast, and it needs to stop. And that's my bottom line. And if Doug were standing here, I'd tell him that. If Dr. Kelley were standing here, I'd tell him that. I think both of them need to stop it.
Yeah.
They need to have a come to Jesus meeting. That's what I think.
I think that's very fair. All right, let's slide out. We'll come back with Catherine Flowers and talk to her about what it's like to live at the top of the world, in her view. All right, we'll be back in a minute. It's Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wind Creek Entertainment.
Welcome back to Alabama Politics This Week. David Person and Josh Moon. And you see the lovely lady on the screen with us. She has been named one of Time's most 100 influential people in the world. She co-chaired a White House Council on Environmental Justice. She's written 2 books. And the accolades really are just too many to mention. So I'm going to abbreviate it. But you can always Google her and get more information on Catherine Flowers. Catherine, it is good to have you with us today on Alabama Politics This Week.
Thank you for inviting me.
We're
Great
glad
title,
to have
too.
You. Yeah.
Should be American Politics This Week.
Well, and sometimes it is. Sometimes that is exactly where we go. So, Catherine, I know you've got a new book out, Holy Ground. It is a great read. Your first book, Waste, was also a great read. The first book, Waste, was autobiographical. This one is a little less autobiography and a little bit more just your thoughts and very well-informed thoughts in the form of a series of essays. And you named it Holy Ground. Why?
Well, I named it Holy Ground because I wanted to emphasize my faith. I felt that at the time the book was coming out that I wanted to reclaim Christianity, because I feel that Christianity has been hijacked by a group of people that Christ wouldn't recognize if he came back to this earth. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to name it Holy Ground. And also, as you know, because you kind of helped me in reading the manuscript as we were putting it together, that's why the first essay is entitled 30 Pieces of Silver, because it would have either have been entitled Holy Ground or 30 Pieces of Silver, because of the story of Judas.
Yeah, and speaking of that first chapter, it is, I thought it was just a really sort of brilliant way to take what basically is almost like a Bible study that you do, and then you combine it with this political critique of money and power, and you use those things as a lens really to look at the NRA and the gun lobby. Why did you decide to start there?
Well, first of all, I wanted to start with Judas. I wanted to start with Judas and the fact that Judas was a friend of Christ and actually one of his disciples, and he sold him off for 30 pieces of silver. He lived or died regretting it. And I saw it as being parallel with what's happening in politics in this country. It's how people have sold out their communities to corporations. Uh, and for some, just greed. Greed and power. And I thought that maybe the way to get people who have voted against their interests to really see it, because a lot of them claim to be Christians, is to remind them of this story from the Bible, so they can see how it compares to what's happening in present day life.
Hmm. You talked about, let me just ask this other question, Josh. You talked about wanting to reclaim Christianity. And as a Christian, as an active Christian, that's something that really resonates with me. How do you think we got to this point where Christianity has been so grossly co-opted by people who don't have empathy, who don't have compassion, who don't seem to reflect the basic fundamental values that Jesus Christ represented in the New Testament?
I think when we got away from reading the Bible ourselves and people started projecting what they thought it meant onto a screen in a church, I think that was the beginning of brainwashing folk. I think we have to start reading and studying for ourselves. I also think that it was all for power and greed. I mean, if we look at the Third Reich and what happened in Germany, Hitler also used Christianity as a reason to demonize Jewish people. So Christianity throughout its beginnings have been used to do wrong things in the name of Christianity. And I believe that we have to save the real meaning of what Christ was about. We have to live it, we have to preach it, but we also have to keep talking about it. And I thought that this book was a good way to do that and to remind people, because a lot of people are doing things in the name of Christianity that's not Christian at all. And we have to call it out.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. And I mean, when you talk about the greed and things that are going on, boy, we've got a plenty of it now. And you know, a lot of times people will say to me, uh, "Boy, you got plenty to write about, don't you?" I mean, and it's it's they talk about the stuff and the trouble that's going on right now, and I guess it would kind of be the same way with you. I mean, I've seen the work of the Trump administration in regards to the EPA, and where the guy who's leading the EPA said the other day that it's their goal to make cars and things more affordable for people and not to protect the environment, which is really something to be said by the guy who's leading the Environmental Protection Agency. And but other cuts, and there was a memo that went around that said that they are no longer going to be focusing on programs that aid poor people. And specifically, I believe that was mentioned in some of the stories I read, stuff about groundwater issues, and sewage issues. Um, so I'm assuming that people often say the same thing to you, which is, "Oh, well, you're going to have plenty of work to do from here on out." But does it ever does it ever get to be, because sometimes for me, it's like it almost feels a little overwhelming, and it feels like it's just never ending. Does it feel that way for you sometimes?
I've been on in this earth a long time, and I've seen a lot of changes. I'm before the Obama era. I was born in the late 1950s. So I've seen a lot of changes. Does it get overwhelming? Sometimes it does. But I've learned I learned to choose my battles. I learned to choose the battles that I'm most likely to win. And I've learned to try to find commonality and seek common ground where I can. In terms of what's happening now, I think that my role is to uplift the stories of the people that they're hurting, that are their constituents. We went to the Colonias in South Texas and we saw Trump signs. But a lot of those families are being disrupted with ICE going in, separating them and sending them back. And these are the same people that are working in Alabama doing these jobs that nobody else wants to do for less money than what they should be paid for doing the job. We, in communities where there's raw sewage on the ground, a lot of those are rural communities. Same people that vote against their interests. But I think that folk don't realize the interconnectedness with government, how it works. And, it's just like with the question that David asked earlier about Christianity and why they did that. I think they did that because they wanted to call out Christians and get Christians to support them. Likewise, a lot of these decisions that are being made and the excuses that they're making, that they're using to justify them, don't make sense. They don't even understand how they resonate on the ground. My problem with politics in general is that a lot of the people that make decisions never visit the people that are impacted by the decisions that they make. They only see the people that come in their offices that can afford to go to Washington, that can pay to put money in their campaign coffers. But to actually go out in Tanner and see that the people in Tanner don't have wastewater treatment like they should have is very different. And a lot of people that claim to be representing this area haven't been there to see, nor do they care. And that's true whether it's in Kentucky, Tennessee, all the states that are the poorest states in this country rely on the federal government. If they took these southern states off the federal dole, they would probably be some of the poorest, underdeveloped places in the world. It's reality. But people don't understand that because it sounds good when these people say this other stuff. Even here in the area where we are, which I think is more, although it voted red, it can be purple sometimes. But there are people here that didn't understand that they were going to be impacted by these federal layoffs. They thought because they were middle class and had degrees, and they've been working at these places forever, and they were protected, and they have people that represent them in Washington, they didn't think that there would be the possibility of losing 7,000 jobs at Redstone Arsenal. So I think that what's going to happen, and the reason why this book is so important at this time, I believe, is that we have to rely on our faith to get through it so we won't be overwhelmed. And number two, to get the strength that we need to keep telling the stories and fighting to push toward the reality of to me, the ideal of what democracy really means, which is the other reason why I wrote the book, because I do believe in democracy. I do believe that that we have a lot of social constructs that are in place that have created these divisions. And I believe that we need to have a reckoning once and for all so we can finally get past this.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, just a second ago, finding commonalities with people, and I know you've worked with a handful of Republicans, some hardline Republicans, some Republicans that we've criticized heavily here. One being Tommy Tuberville, and Jeff Sessions being another, and who I've routinely called a former Confederate general. But you found some common ground with them. I guess how did you kind of go about that, and what is there any lessons for the rest of us to learn in maybe accomplishing some goals and making life better for some people who desperately need it that we can take from your work?
Well, I think first of all, having a conversation with someone away from the cameras is a different kind of conversation than when they're, you know, when they're under the scrutiny of everybody else and maybe trying to please a particular audience. Um, so I think that's different. And the way I kind of talk about it in my earlier book, the way Jeff Sessions and I came to be friends was that I attended a town hall meeting. I was one of the few Black people that was there that was in Lowndes County. And when I went to the town hall meeting, he was talking about the funding that was available at that time for rural communities. And my question to him was, how can rural communities get this money when they require a 25% match and they don't have a tax base? He couldn't answer the question. And he came to me afterwards and said, that has always been my concern as well. And he said that, because he told me that he grew up poor in Wilcox County. That's how we started the conversation. And from that point on, every time, because, when I first started doing this work, I used to get death threats. And every time I would have a meeting, and Senator Sessions knew about it, every time I had a meeting, he would send someone from his office, usually from Washington, if not from Washington, from his local office. They would go to meetings with me. He would not let me go by myself. So that was how we developed a rapport. And I was able to, when he was, I just learned a lot about him. He introduced me to his family. I met his children, his grandchildren. His son-in-law was Asian. His grandchildren, I was able to meet them. He's the one that introduced me to Luther Strange. That's how I met Luther. So, and then later, of course, with Senator Tuberville, I was actually invited to go to Washington by Senator Booker's people. They reached out to me because Senator Booker was on the Agriculture Committee, and they were debating the Farm Bill and Senator Booker was trying to get more money in the Farm Bill for wastewater treatment in rural communities. And when I was asked to go, people kind of warned me because the ranking senator on that committee was Senator Tuberville. And they were saying that, he could say anything and blah, 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 blah. So, I felt like we could find some commonality somewhere. And when he walked into the room, well, first of all, when I got there, what was interesting is that the witnesses that he had chosen to testify, both of them came to me and said, we support you, because they knew that the wastewater problem was real. That was one. And then second, when I saw him walk into the room, I decided to go and introduce myself to him. And what I said to him was, I started off by saying, Senator, do you think that it is fair that when a homeowner buys a septic system and put it in the ground, the liability is automatically transferred to them? He said, no, I don't think it's fair. And the reason why I did that was because, one, I knew that this man had recruited a lot of Black players to play for him. And he had to go into a lot of Black homes and talk to a lot of Black parents and convince them that he was going to treat their sons fairly. I knew that. And then the other thing I knew, excuse me, that if he had spent any time in the South and in rural communities, he knew that this was a problem. And during that particular hearing, other than Senator Booker, there were 2 Democratic senators that showed up to ask questions. The other ones were all Republicans from Mississippi, from Arkansas. They were the ones asking the questions because they knew that this was a problem in their communities. It has not gone away since January the 20th. These problems still exist. And I think that this is an opportunity to reach some common ground, because they can't keep telling these people they're helping them because they're cutting the government and they still got sewage coming back into their homes.
Does it, when you form these relationships, and because I have a fair amount myself with some Republicans and people who I genuinely like, who I've come to like. I've met their families and know them. I think they're at heart, they want to be good people. but then you hear them say things, and you see them do things that run counter to that. And I know that has to be true for Tommy Tuberville, and you and what you've seen, and I assume the same is true with Jeff Sessions as well, although he's been out of the limelight now for a few years. But does it? Can you reconcile those things? I have trouble. I have trouble watching them do those things and saying, man, I know we're friends and I respect you and everything, but my God, what are you doing? And because you're hurting people, and I have a lot of trouble in reconciling those things and remaining close to those people in some respect.
Well, I feel that, as a black woman in America that has had to deal with a lot of complex relationships with white people, I've been trained to deal with this.
Yeah. Maybe that's my
I've been
problem.
trained to deal with
The privilege that I've experienced.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the privilege sometimes to not get along with folk I don't have the privilege to go to folk to go and not shop. That I don't have a black alternative to go to instead of going to Walmart or Target. I don't have that option. So our whole lives have been about compromise.
Right.
And sometimes biting our tongue when we want to say something or do something. That's for me anyway. I don't know about anybody else, but that's been my experience. So, but what I've done is how to take the heat to move things in the direction for my people. And I have, Booker T. Washington had to do it. If you go back and look at his history, and he was criticized. So somebody has, I think we have to fight on different fronts. I'm not saying don't fight. I think we have to fight on different fronts. I think my role and my gift is to see commonality. I don't agree with everything they say. And I'm the first one to say it. I don't go there and I'm not one of those people that's going to shake my head and pretend like it's all right, because I don't do that. But I also feel like in this case with Tuberville, when they tried to increase the amount of money for rural wastewater treatment, it was him and Cory Booker working together on this. The Democrats didn't support it because of Tuberville. So if you represent a Democratic district, think about Arthur Davis. When Arthur Davis voted against the Affordable Care Act, and he represented a district that needed the Affordable Care Act.
Yes.
And a lot of those Democrats represent those districts that needed that money too, and did not support it. And I actually had to call some of my friends. I had to call some of my friends who had more political pull than I did with the Democrats, and call them and say, look, you need to support this. And I think it goes, I hate to, because it's been overused a lot both ways, but I've seen some Democrats vote against our interests. And we don't say anything. We don't say anything because they're black. We don't say anything because they're our friends and we go to church with them, or we went to school with them. But I think that the reason why this country is in the position that it's in today is because we have looked the other way, both Democrats and Republicans, when people have not done things that were in the best interest of the communities that they represent.
Hey, Catherine, I want to, before we have to let you go, I want to go back to Holy Ground for a minute. There's a chapter in that book that I think is really compelling. It's the chapter about the sterilization of your mother and other black women. Can you talk a little bit about why you decided to include that in the book, and kind of share some of your thoughts about that?
Well, I thought it was important to tell my mother's story because we were talking about female reproductive rights. And my mother was in her 20s when she was sterilized. And it was a federal program that paid for it. And she was sterilized by a black doctor at Tuskegee at John A. Andrew Hospital. And what was so interesting is that in telling this story, I'm giving other people permission to tell their stories because she's not the only one. And I was recently at a book signing in Montgomery, And one of my relatives was there who talked about the fact that the doctor who signed her birth certificate when her mother gave birth to her as a teenager is the same doctor that sterilized my mother. And a light bulb went off in her head when she said, that's probably why my mother didn't have any more children. And she said she needed to have a discussion with her mother. There are lots of women that did not tell what happened to them. That when they went to that hospital and they were poor, a condition of delivering their babies was to sterilize them. And that happened to a lot of women in the Black Belt. And I thought that was very important as we talk about whether or not we have control or autonomy on our bodies. I even tell my own story about how I had an ectopic pregnancy, and I was not even informed that I had an ectopic pregnancy. I found out because I was on the table getting ready to be operated on, and I didn't know I was pregnant until the anesthesiologist came in there, and I was like in a twilight sleep when he said, I can't give her this anesthesia because she's pregnant. She has a positive pregnancy test. And the doctor came in afterwards, and he said the same thing to him, and the doctor said, oh, you can give it to her. She can't have it anyway. That's how I found out. So, and I probably would have made the same decision anyway, but I should have made that decision. The doctor shouldn't have made that decision. Likewise with my mother, that should have been her decision to make and not to make under duress. And that is, that's why I think it's so important, because all these things that I thought that my daughter wouldn't have to worry about, or my granddaughter wouldn't have to worry about, here we are again, fighting these same battles. Goes back to Josh's earlier question. No, it never stops. We have to keep fighting, because there's always, see, the other thing about holy ground, and I'm going to hold the book up, the other thing about holy ground is that we have to acknowledge that there is good and evil. We don't like to say that word a lot. There's good and evil. I think that there are people that are governed by the devil, but they use Christianity to cloak themselves. Because what they're doing is evil. And the way we can determine whether it's good or evil is how many people get hurt.
That's a powerful metric that we don't hear, I don't think, pointed to enough. I think you just hit it right on the head. How many people are being hurt? How are the least of these being impacted? And speaking of that, my final question today to you is about the EPA cuts that are being planned or that have been threatened. Because of the work you've been doing in Lowndes County and around the country, there are lots of communities that I suspect are going to be affected by this. What's your assessment of how these communities are going to be affected?
I think, unfortunately, these communities are going to be dealing with the burden that they've always dealt with neglect from the states and neglect from the federal government, except when they want to make them sacrifice zones. What do I mean by sacrifice zones? I mean putting dirty plants and dirty factories there that they think that are going to further contaminate the land. I mean, we could just look to West Virginia for examples of that. Recently I was watching a visit that someone recorded, a documentary about going to West Virginia, to towns that are left desolate because of coal. Where their water is contaminated, people have cancer. The ones that are still there, they can't get out of using drugs. I mean, we have to take the responsibility for the decisions that some people made to allow this to happen and not allow for a just transition. And I'm very concerned that a lot of these communities that have been suffering will continue to suffer. And what people don't understand is that in this country, most poor people in this country are white. They are not Black. So do the math.
Yeah. Well, most of us were told there would be no math. And so, Catherine, thank you so much for coming on and visiting with us. And we would love to do this. I mean, we would love to do it basically monthly. But if but any other time you can make it on, we would love to have you back. But more importantly, please keep doing what you're doing, because you know it, and we know it, and everybody out there knows it. It's vitally important. You have shined the light on problems that have been going on in our state, in the country, for decades, for generations, and they finally got some attention because of a lot of the work that you were doing, and the fact that you wouldn't give up on things, and that you continued to build bridges where other people wouldn't build bridges, and it's led to real change. And honestly, I'm proud to have known you. I wish we would have had a better introduction than the poor guy that introduced us, your brother, JC. But listen, that's no, listen, JC is, I told David earlier, he's one of the best, man. JC, I loved him.
He's funny.
He was
Funny
one
guy.
of my best sources on a story that I've ever had. I couldn't get him off the phone a lot of times, but I love talking to him for at least portions of the conversations that we had. But through him, I got to meet you, and man, I really do appreciate it, and we so appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. That is Catherine
Thanks, Catherine.
Flowers. Y'all go buy her book, Holy Ground. If you don't know where to get it, just send me a message. But yeah, you can find it anywhere. Honestly, go to Amazon, go to your local bookstores. Go to your local bookstores.
Yeah.
And ask them. They probably have it. If they don't, they can get it for you. And support them wherever you can, because I don't know if y'all have heard or not, there are a lot of crazies out there giving bookstores problems. So, do this one and read it. You will not regret it, and support
That's
Catherine
right.
in her work, and support the folks that are impacted by her work wherever you can. All right, we're going to slide out. It's Alabama Politics This Week. We'll be back in a minute. Alrighty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person. Our thanks to Catherine Flowers for coming on. That's always great, man. She's great person.
Love her, man. She's a phenomenal human being.
Her brother, I don't know about. But her brother, I don't know about.
JC is funny, man. The Reverend JC
is one of the funniest dudes I've ever had the pleasure to know. I can tell you some stories about JC. Oh man, I had some. Oh man. Oh, my first ever dealings with JC was something else. Yeah, it was great. I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way at all. I really don't. He's a good dude. But no, it's thanks to her, thanks to the folks at Wind Creek, thanks to the folks at SPLC, for everybody for sponsoring this thing and doing what we do, and for all of you for listening and keeping up. I get it's funny, man. We get very few emails, but every Friday I start getting text messages and calls from people, and it's always surprising to me, just the randomness of the people that call me or send me a message. I mean, I'll get somebody from the governor's office, or I'll get somebody from, the Speaker of the House office, or somebody in Katie Britt's office, or, you know what I mean? It's just the randomness of the messages and things that come out of this thing that let me know that people are listening, and so it's nice.
Yeah.
I think that, you know what, what I've often heard is they listen because we offer exactly what we set out to offer, which was the viewpoints and interviews of people that don't get on other shows, and they're not allowed to talk on other places. You don't hear their perspectives. You don't hear what they say. And I think that's the reason why people listen here, is they want to know what folks like Catherine Flowers has to say. They want to hear Ken Martin from, the DNC, come on and talk about what they're going to do. You're not going to get that anywhere else around here. Yeah. And so I think that's very important.
I've had a couple of news anchors in the state too tell me that they listen. One in Montgomery and one actually here in Huntsville. So I think people are looking for, as you said, that point of view, that voice that they don't hear, and also probably I'd like to think some progressive analysis from us
Yeah.
that's not, even though we lean heavily in one direction, I think we're pretty fair, and I think
Yeah.
we're pretty logical about how we approach this thing.
Well, we're smarter than all those other people, David. That's the problem. And that helps. That helps. Listen, it helps. Oh, listen, we can say it. They know it. We all know it. I mean, listen to these other jackasses on the radios and stuff. I mean, come on. They know we're smarter than them. Get out of here. You know, I mean, come on. All right, we're gonna skip right to the Rightwing Nut because it encompasses a lot. And the Rightwing Nut this week is Caroline Leavitt, the White House spokesperson. And the reason it is not because of her stupid answers. I mean, although we could probably do that every week and come up with something stupid that she said to people. But this week, what caught my attention, and David's as well, is the comments related to a video that was put out by the White House about deportations. The deportation at that point, I believe it was the Venezuelan migrants that she was speaking of, and there's a video with the song "Closing Time" over the top of it of a bunch of guys. Folks being deported out of the country. And of course they highlight on there, you know, some guys with, the scary facial tattoos, you know, as though that's an uncommon thing now. I seen 18 guys at my kid's school the other day with a face tattoo or a neck tattoo of some sort.
Right.
You know, I remember when Mike Tyson got that face tattoo and everybody was like, holy hell, he's gone crazy. And now there's like, it's just the most common thing in the world.
Look at Jelly Roll.
I know, right?
Roll's whole face is covered with tattoos.
Yeah, my mama's out. Have you heard Jelly Roll's new song? You know, my mom. I mean, you know, come on. But you know, it's the callousness that got me. The lack of empathy, the lack of these are human beings. You know, whatever you might think of them, and were there probably some folks who committed crimes in the group? I'm probably sure. I mean, with any group of, you know, however many you round up, there's probably going to be a handful of people that have committed some crimes of some sort. But at the same time, the overwhelming majority of those people, no matter what you think of the immigration system, the overwhelming majority of them came here for the American dream that we sold to people for our entire existence, of this shining beacon on the hill, of this opportunity, and they escaped whatever the hell it was that they were trying to escape, wherever they were from. And they came here with that dream of doing better for themselves and their family. You can criticize how they did it. You can criticize, you know, what they thought of that dream or how they went about achieving it, you know, in your neighborhood or whatever, and whatever ownership you believe you have. You know, I'm assuming your name is something in the Native American world, since this is yours that you're staking claim to. But the end of the day, they're human beings, and we're making this video of them, and we know for a fact that some of these people were not illegal. They were here legally. They were here. They have, under our laws, they were here very much legally. And we've deported them anyways. And now there's no way to get them back, because God knows you couldn't do that. And they've been sent to some hellhole detention center where they're clearly being mistreated, because we've seen the videos from there as well. And this person, this 20-something-year-old woman, is standing here with this gleeful sort of really assholishness, I will say, attitude towards other human beings. And you know, man, it ain't okay. It's not okay. And it's I understand that they think it's cute and everything else, and I guarantee you there'll be a story within a few months, because she'll move on from this job here, and there'll be a story where she couldn't get a job, or she was at a restaurant and she got harassed, and oh, isn't it so terrible about her life being turned upside down, and what can we do? Oh my God, it's awful. And she's going to be looking for some sympathy and some empathy, and you know,
and going to be offended if she doesn't get it.
That's right.
You know, so my quick take is it's astounding to me that people can claim to be claim to be Christians, claim to subscribe to a Judeo-Christian ethic, and then show no empathy and to be dehumanizing towards people. That just, the two are not compatible. One thing I'm happy about, Josh, is I am seeing that in some conservative Christian evangelical circles, they are calling this out. They are saying that this lack of empathy, this callousness that you're talking about, is incompatible with fundamental Christian beliefs. And more Christians ought to be saying that. That doesn't mean that, that you have to be liberal on immigration like me. If that's not how you want to be, fine. Be conservative on it, but at least see in these people their humanity, and understand the impact that what this deportation is going to do to their families. Have some sympathy, have some empathy. When we lose that, we lose everything that we say we stand for, and that, as you're pointing out, Josh, many of us are going to want for ourselves.
Yeah. Let me tell you something. I've studied this a lot, this immigration issue. I've studied the border issues. I've looked at everything that has gone on and put it into the context of the last 10 to 15 years. And taking a look at what's going on. And there have been at times some very serious issues at the border in terms of our employees, our government employees, whatever agency they may work for, being overwhelmed by the number of people attempting to seek asylum here because of whatever things that are happening within their country. And our asylum system has been kind of overrun, and we have thus caused us some problems within that asylum system. Now, and I think there should have been some more funds devoted to this through both the Bush 2 administration, the Obama administration, the first Trump administration, and the Biden administration. They all should have devoted more funds and more personnel down there to handle the crush of this asylum system because that's where the problems are. Okay. That's just where the problems are. What I've never understood is the average person's position that this is a huge problem, because I want you to explain to me how this is a huge problem for you. I want you to tell me what exactly has been taken from you. What exactly has this cost you? What exactly has this done to you? What exactly has it done to the country? Because I can tell you a lot of the positives that it has done for the country. I can tell you a lot of the different ways that this has impacted our country in a very positive way. And I mean, are there criminals who come across our border from time to time? Yeah. Are there people who commit crimes once they're over here and they weren't criminals when they crossed the border? Yes, that happens as well. But it has been happening for as long as we've been doing this. Last I checked, there were a lot of Irish folks who've committed some crimes. A lot of Italians who committed some crimes. A lot of Europeans commit some crimes, and somehow or another, though, we're not up in arms about this. But because of the southern border and the southern border situation here that has been politicized, and we turn these people into boogeymen because they speak a different language and they have darker skin, and we can say, "Ooh, Venezuelan gangs." You don't know shit about a Venezuelan gang. You don't know if a Venezuelan gang is any more serious than a South LA gang. You don't have any idea. Yeah. You don't. Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you and tell you that I've read a lot about what's going on in these countries and our role in it and stuff. And I want no part of the cartel. I can tell you that. Right. So, I think we got some issues there. However, we've also worked with the cartels. Our American government has on many, many occasions, including currently and under the previous Trump administration. We've worked with them. Okay. We've done business with them. We've had high level meetings with people representing the cartels. So, that's just how this has worked. And so, but my point is this: people have been led down this road of, oh my God, the southern border. Oh my God. And to a person, I've asked, you can't tell me what this has done to you. You can't tell me what it's over, because it hadn't overrun your schools. It hadn't overrun your hospitals. It hadn't cost you an extraordinary amount of money. It hadn't cost anybody an extraordinary amount of money. Matter of fact, if you average it all out, it's been offset to the positive in the terms of the amount of money that we've taken out of our screwed up system. If anybody has a complaint, the damn immigrants have a complaint because they've been used left and right.
Yeah, I was going to say, they pay into any of them that are working, unless they're just getting paid cash under the table, they're going to be paying into Social Security. They're going to be paying sales tax. I mean, it's pretty clear that they're putting in money that they're not going to be able to access unless they're legal. They're not going to be able to access it.
Yeah.
When I say legal, I mean, I should be clear. Unless they don't have, unless they have become U.S. citizens.
Yes.
Because there are people who are here legally,
yes,
who also are paying into the system, who aren't going to be able to benefit because they only have a green card or a work visa.
Yeah, and it's just, I think I've used this example before, but in the neighborhood in which I grew up, in Decatur. Okay, Decatur has a very large Hispanic population that has grown over the course of years. Started when I was in middle school, going into high school. Really started to kind of grow, and it has a large Hispanic population at this point. And in the neighborhood in which I live and grew up in now, there are a number of Hispanic families who live there. In the house next to the one that I grew up in, is a house that is run down, and they've got it's just a not a very nice looking house, and the yard is routinely not maintained, all that sort of stuff. And Hispanic family lives in that house. 2 houses over, Hispanic family lives there. It's one of the nicest houses you'll ever find. Across the street, Hispanic family lives there. One of the nicest houses you'll ever find. You get down the street, couple of houses down, Hispanic family lives there. One of the nicest houses you'll ever see. They've added on, guy runs a concrete business. Another guy who's up here runs a construction business. That's how America works. Okay. And let me tell you something. When you go into neighborhoods that are predominantly white, there's going to be a house that's trashy sitting right over here where a white family lives. There's going to be a house right over here that's really nice where a white family lives. There's going to be a house over here that's really nice where a white family lives. That's how it works, man. And this idea that folks, we got to stop this. All right. We got to stop this idea that people are vastly different when you're at the same basic economic levels. Okay. Because you're not. You're not. I don't care if you're Hispanic, if you're black, if you're white, if you're Asian, whatever you are. If you're at the same basic economic levels, y'all got a hell of a lot more in common than you do with the white dude who's making $1 billion. Okay?
Very true. Very true.
A lot more in common. And y'all start looking out for each other and stop this ridiculous bullshit about how you're being threatened because there's a guy who speaks a different language that moved into your neighborhood. You're not being threatened by him. You're being threatened by the guy that keeps jacking up the prices for no reason at all. Okay. You're being threatened by the folks, the 20 people that control 90% of the wealth in the country. That's who you're being threatened by, not this guy that moved down the street whose family is, not from around here. It just irks me to no end, man. It really does. So, all right. I think we've given these people enough.
Yes, we have. I think so.
Right. Let's get out of here.
We're in good shape. That was a good rant, by the way. Good rant.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it. All right. Till next week. Y'all be safe out there.